June 23, 1942. Over the skies of South Wales, Royal Air Force spotters stared through binoculars, frozen in disbelief. A sleek German fighter was descending right toward their airfield. Engines humming, wings glinting silver in the afternoon sun, sirens should have been screaming. Anti-aircraft guns should have been tracking the target. But something about the approach felt wrong. The German aircraft floated down gracefully, lined up with the runway, and touched down as if it belonged there. It rolled to a stop near the control tower. The canopy slid open. Out climbed a young Luftwaffe officer, Oberleutnant Armin Faber, peeling off his leather helmet, expecting a friendly greeting. Instead, he froze. The aircraft parked nearby weren't Messerschmitts. They were Spitfires. The men running toward him weren't in Luftwaffe gray. They were dressed in Royal Air Force blue, and in that single moment, Faber realized the impossible truth. He had just landed Germany's most secret and deadly fighter on a British airfield, completely intact. The Focke-Wulf 190, Hitler's pride of the skies, was now in enemy hands. For months, this plane had haunted Allied pilots over France. It had appeared suddenly in 1941, faster, stronger, more agile than anything the RAF had. The moment British pilots met it in combat, they knew something had changed. Squadron leader J.E. Johnson, who would become Britain's top ace, later wrote, "It was faster than our Spitfires in level flight and in the dive. It could outroll us. Its firepower was devastating. For the first time in the war, we were completely outclassed." By early 1942, RAF losses over France were climbing. Veterans who had survived the Battle of Britain were being shot down by an aircraft they couldn't outturn or outrun. The 190 could dive away from pursuit, roll out of danger, and tear through a Spitfire with 4 20mm cannons. Even new American pilots arriving in Britain were warned the same way. Don't dogfight with a 190. Don't try to roll with it. Don't chase it into a dive. The list of don'ts was long. The list of what could actually beat it was terrifyingly short. Allied intelligence needed answers. What made this aircraft unstoppable, and what could stop it? But every 190 that crashed in Britain was too damaged to reveal its secrets. That is, until Armin Faber made his fateful mistake. Now, before we continue, pause for a second and imagine the disbelief at that airfield. The most feared German fighter, sitting quietly on British soil, delivered gift wrapped by the enemy. For British intelligence, it was a miracle. For Germany, it was a catastrophe. But how did such a skilled pilot make such a fatal error? Armin Faber wasn't a rookie. At just 21, he was already an ace, confident, sharp, and loyal to the Luftwaffe's elite JG-2 squadron. On that June afternoon, his flight was returning from a mission over the English Channel, escorting bombers. The fighting was intense. Cloud cover was thick. Somewhere in the chaos of combat, Faber lost his bearings. At 400 miles per hour, disorientation comes fast. In the clouds, the horizon disappears. The sun's reflection tricks your eyes. One wrong turn and north becomes south. Friend becomes foe. Faber broke through the clouds, saw green countryside below, an airfield, familiar markings, calm runways, and assumed he was safely back over France. He wasn't. He was over Wales. He lined up, lowered his gear, and came in for landing at RAF Pembry. When he saw the Spitfires, panic hit. He tried to restart his engine, but RAF ground crews were already closing in. Within minutes, the young German ace was under arrest, staring helplessly at the British officers inspecting his immaculate fighter. At RAF headquarters, the news hit like a thunderbolt. Britain now possessed an intact Focke-Wulf 190, the plane that had dominated the skies. Air Chief Marshal Sholto. Douglas immediately ordered it transported to the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. The instructions were simple. Disassemble it. Study everything. Learn its soul. Within 48 hours, Britain's best engineers and test pilots were crawling over the machine. What they discovered explained months of Allied losses. The FW-190 wasn't beautiful. It was brutal, designed for performance, not elegance. Its BMW 801 radial engine roared with 1,100 horsepower, far more than the Spitfire MKV's 1,470. Its wings were thick and strong, optimized for quick rolls and tight control. test pilot Captain Eric Brown flew it and couldn't believe what he felt. The ailerons were light and responsive at all speeds, he said. You could throw it around the sky with almost no effort. While a Spitfire demanded muscle and finesse, the 190 responded like it read your thoughts, and then there was its firepower. 4 20mm cannons plus 2 machine guns. A 2-second burst could shred anything in front of it. Now, at last, the RAF understood why their pilots had been dying. But intelligence testing also revealed the cracks, the weaknesses hidden beneath its reputation. Above 20,000 feet, the 190's powerful radial engine began to choke. Cooling problems, thin air, loss of power. The same engine that made it unbeatable at low altitude was gasping for air up high. And though it could roll faster than anything else, it couldn't sustain long, turning fights. A patient Spitfire pilot, forcing it into a horizontal turn, could slowly gain the advantage. The most shocking discovery came during high-speed dives. At over 400 mph, the controls stiffened so badly that it took both hands and sheer strength for a pilot to pull out. That split-second struggle created an opening. If an Allied pilot stayed close enough through the dive, the German would be fighting his own airplane when he tried to recover. For the first time, the RAF had a playbook, real tactics that worked. Within weeks, intelligence bulletins spread across Allied squadrons, and soon American pilots arrived to see the prize for themselves. In August 1942, test pilots from the U.S. Army Air Forces touched down at Farnborough. They climbed into the captured 190, took notes, and flew it until they knew every sound it made. Major Cass Hope wrote a report that every U.S. fighter group would later study before flying into combat. His conclusion was blunt. The FW-190 will beat any Allied fighter below 20,000 feet if the German pilot knows what he's doing. Our advantage is altitude. Above 25,000 feet, we win. Force them high. That single paragraph reshaped American air tactics. When the P-47 Thunderbolt entered the war in 1943, its mission doctrine was built around altitude. Stay high, keep the fight in the thin air. Let the German engine suffocate. And it worked. The captured 190 also influenced design. Engineers studied its roll rate and reworked the P-47 and P-51 control systems. They analyzed its gun placement, cockpit layout, even how its switches were arranged for combat efficiency. America wasn't just learning how to fight the 190, they were learning from it. But perhaps the most powerful lesson wasn't technical. It was psychological. For months, Allied pilots had whispered about the 190 like it was a ghost they couldn't touch. Invincible, untouchable. Now they saw it up close. Real, mechanical, beatable. They knew its strengths. They knew its flaws. And confidence returned to the Allied skies. By 1943, the air war was changing. New Spitfire Mk9s, upgraded with Merlin engines, could meet the 190 on even ground. The P-51 Mustang, with its range and altitude performance, began to dominate the upper atmosphere. Suddenly, German pilots were the ones flying cautiously. Looking over their shoulders, the kill ratios flipped. FW-190s were falling faster than Germany could replace them. The Allies had turned the hunter into the hunted, all because of one wrong landing. Even German aces noticed the shift. Oberleutnant Josef Pips Prieler wrote in his combat journal, "The Americans have studied us. They no longer follow us into rolling scissors. They climb, force us higher, and make our engines labor. They have learned, and learn they did." The captured FW-190 remained at Farnborough for the rest of the war, the benchmark by which every new German fighter was measured. When the improved FW-190 D9 Dora appeared with a new inline engine, Allied engineers immediately compared it to Faber's aircraft, already knowing what had been fixed. And what hadn't. That one captured plane became a Rosetta Stone for German aviation. After the war, historians calculated just how massive the impact had been. Thousands of Allied pilots were briefed using data gathered from Faber's aircraft. Entire training films were based on it. It shaped Allied aircraft design, combat tactics, and even pilot confidence. Captain Eric Brown later wrote, "Faber's navigation error gave us the Rosetta Stone of German fighter design. Every advantage they had was documented, and every weakness exploited. That single aircraft probably saved more Allied lives than any intelligence coup of the war. The irony wasn't lost on Germany. One Luftwaffe officer admitted later, "We spent months trying to capture a Spitfire Mach 9. The British didn't even have to try. We delivered our best fighter to them ourselves." Armin Fabers spent the rest of the war in a Canadian prisoner of war camp. He survived, returned to Germany after 1945, and lived quietly until 1976. Though he was initially blamed for the loss, later records acknowledged that disorientation could have fooled any pilot, but his mistake had already changed history. It proved a simple, brutal truth about warfare knows. No technology, no weapon, no machine is truly invincible. Every design hides trade-offs. Every advantage comes with a weakness waiting to be found. The FW-190's dominance at low altitude cost it power at high altitude. Its lightning-fast roll rate made its controls stiff at high speed. Its heavy guns made it deadly, but less agile. Once the Allies understood those trade-offs, the myth of the invincible 190 collapsed. Today, surviving FW-190s sit in museums, shining under display lights, symbols of German engineering and innovation. But behind each one is the story of a young pilot who got lost in the clouds and unknowingly changed the balance of the entire air war. That landing at RAF Pembry turned a weapon of terror into a textbook for victory, a single mistake that handed Hitler's secret weapon straight to the enemy, and in doing so, helped the Allies reclaim the skies of Europe. Because in war, superior machines matter. But superior intelligence wins. Sometimes history turns not on great battles, but on one pilot, one landing, and one incredible accident. That's how a moment of confusion became a turning point in World War II, and how Armin Fabers' mistake helped the Allies win the war in the air. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Battles and Beyond, where forgotten moments of war come to life with the power of true storytelling. Every week, we uncover the hidden choices, the small mistakes, and the extraordinary acts that changed history forever. Like this video, share it with someone who loves aviation history, and tell us in the comments which W-through aircraft should we cover next. Until next time, this is Battles and Beyond, where every story takes flight.